Can I ask you to summarize Kierkegaard's story of the escaped man and then discuss what it reveals to us about the importance of inwardness as it relates to the relationship between truth and value?
Sure. So yeah, so Kierkegaard has this section in his one of his works where he distinguishes between the objective way and the subjective way of thinking about truth. And what he's really interested in is attitudes towards truth rather than what truth is or anything like that. So there's a sort of a standard philosophical question asking about what truth is, and that's not really his primary interest. Um, so the primary interest is how we relate to truth. And one of the things he talks about is this story about someone who's escaped from a madhouse and is trying to convince people that he's not mad. And he thinks, okay, well, what I need to do is say lots of true things. And so he says lots of true things that are completely irrelevant to the context in which he finds himself. So I think in the story, he just keeps repeating that the earth is round. And of course, that's precisely a good way to convince people that you're mad rather than that you're sane. Because ordinarily, when you're engaged in conversation, you want your conversation to be relevant. And he's not relevant. He's just saying things that are true, but that are of no consequence to anybody in the context. And Kierkegaard's thought there is that what the madman is doing is concerning himself in an objective way with the truth, and what he really should be doing is concerning himself in a subjective way with the truth. And what Kierkegaard means by that, at least as I read him, is that to concern yourself in an objective way is just to try to believe truths. And obviously that's something that most of us think is a good thing. Believing the truth is by and large better than believing falsehoods. But it's important that we do more, Kierkegaard thinks, than simply believe truths. And what matters is that we have a certain level of commitment, or as he sometimes describes it, it's important that we have inwardness or a subjective attitude towards the truth. And as I understand that as being essentially the idea that it's important to believe truths that we care about. So the madman, in uttering that repeatedly that the earth is round, doesn't care about the thing that he's saying, right? He's saying it for some other reason, to convince somebody of something. And lots of people believe all sorts of things, but don't really care about those things, aren't committed to those beliefs. The important thing for Kierkegaard is to have a certain level of commitment. And the reason why he thinks this is important, he's a religious thinker primarily, so his main concern is with Christianity specifically. And he's concerned that people think that they're being Christian if they accept certain claims about the nature of the universe and our place in it. But that's wrong, he thinks. What it is to really be a Christian is to commit one's life to Christianity, and that's quite different. So it's entirely possible to claim to be a Christian, but let that have very little influence on how one actually lives one's life. And that person is not, as he puts it, in the truth in a subjective way. Even though what they believe is, by his lights, true, because he is a Christian, he doesn't think that they're doing it in the right way. Whereas a person could believe by his lights, a false religion, but nevertheless do it with commitment, right? Do it in such a way that it informs their life. It affects how they live their life and what they do on a daily basis. And that person is even though they believe, again, by Kierkegaard's lights, falsehoods, nevertheless, that person is in the truth in a subjective way. That connects up with various ideas in existentialist thinking. Most noticeably, I think, when, or coming back to the thing I mentioned earlier, such as idea that existence precedes essence, what people often forget is that immediately after that, he says, or in other words, that we must begin from the subjective. So he seems to think that of those two things as essentially saying the same thing. And I think at least part of what he means there can be thought of in Kierkegaardian terms, right? So the idea is that there's a certain primacy to subjectivity or subjective thinking, whereby that is not thought of, is thought of as implicating a certain level of care or commitment to our projects, our decisions, and our beliefs, rather than being concerned primarily with objective truths.